Today we're going to be making this fairly simple beach bag that is surprisingly quick to make. And this beach bag is ideal for your next vacation or pool trip, or I think it would make a really cute gift as well. And for this project, I am using some recycled cotton polyester yarn. And it's a size 4 medium weight yarn. And the color I chose is Mineral Springs. And I'm also going to be using a size J or 10 or 5 3/4 millimeter crochet hook. And we're going to begin by attaching the yarn to our crochet hook using a slip knot. And then we're going to chain 50. And once you have your 50 chains in place, then we're going to turn our work and we're going to skip these first 2 chains and diving into the back loop only of our 3rd chain from our crochet hook, we're going to place a double crochet. And we're going to place 1 double crochet in the back loop only of our next 32 stitches. And once you have your 33 double crochets, your project should look something like this, where you have your double crochets and then 15 chains hanging off. From here, we're going to chain 2 and turn our work. And so from now on, we're just going to be working in these 33 double crochets. So the pattern from here is going to be to skip your chain 2 as a turning chain, as well as your first double crochet. And then you're going to place 1 double crochet under the full stitch in the remaining stitches in your row until you get to the last 2 stitches of the row. And when you get to your last 2 stitches of this row, you're going to skip your second to the last stitch and place 1 double crochet in your very last stitch. So now you should have 31 double crochets. From here, we're going to chain 2 and turn our work. And now all we're going to do is just repeat that last row over and over until we get down to only 5 stitches in our row. And once you've worked your way down to 5 stitches in your latest row, then your handle should look something like this. And so from here, we're going to chain 2 and turn our work. And so for this row, all we're going to do is place 1 double crochet in each of our 5 double crochets. So we won't skip any stitches. And we're going to repeat this until we have a total of 10 rows with 5 double crochets. And once you have a total of 10 rows with your 5 double crochet stitches, and that does include your decreasing row right here, then all you're going to do is start to increase back out. So to do that, we're going to chain 2 and turn our work, and we're simply going to place 2 double crochets in our first and our last stitch, and then 1 double crochet in each of the stitches in between. So we should increase by 2. So we'll have a total of 7 double crochets at the end of our row. And at the end of your row, you're just going to chain 2 and turn your work. And from here, we're just going to repeat that last row until we've built back up to 31 double crochets in our latest row. And I'll show you what to do when you get to 31 double crochets. And once you've built up to 31 stitches, then your pattern should look something like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain 2 off of our last double crochet, and then we're going to lay our handle out flat and make sure that you don't have any twists or turns in it. And then you're going to locate your starting chain. And then working with your starting chain, you want to flip it over so that you can see the back bumps. And what we're going to do is just make sure that we don't have any twists or turns in our starting chain. And then we're simply just going to slip stitch into the first chain's back bump to join. So now your project should look something like this. And so from here, we're just going to simply turn our work back on this end of the handle that we've been working, and we're going to continue our pattern for one more row. So we're going to place 2 double crochets in our first stitch as well as our last stitch, and then 1 double crochet in each of the stitches in between, and we should have a total of 33 double crochets when we're done. And when you get to the end of your row, you're going to chain 15. And once you have your 15 chains, then we need to join the other end of this first part of our handle. So this is going to be at the end of your very first row right here. And all we're going to do is just simply slip stitch right here into the last stitch of that first row to join. So now you should have a semicircular pattern where your 2 ends of your handle are joined by these chain stitches on both sides. So now all we're going to do is work in a circular pattern going over the edges of our handles as well as our chain stitches. So we're going to begin by chaining 2. And so now all we're going to do is place 1 double crochet back in that same stitch where we placed our slip stitch, and then we're just going to place 1 double crochet in each stitch in our row, going all the way around the circle. And when you make it to your chain stitches, what I want you to do is locate the back bump, which is this 3rd loop in the back. And you're just going to work your double crochet stitches in the back bumps. And when you make it to your original chain 2 that started this row, all you're going to do is slip stitch into the first double crochet, and then you're simply going to chain 2 and place 1 double crochet back in that same stitch where you placed your slip stitch, and then you're just going to place 1 double crochet in each stitch in your row, going all the way back around. And when you get to the end of your row, just like before, we're going to slip stitch into the top of our first double crochet. And from here, we're just going to repeat that last row for multiple rows to build the body of our beach bag. And I went ahead and followed that pattern until I had a total of 18 rows. So now we're going to begin our decreasing pattern. So the pattern for this row is going to be to chain 2, and then you're going to place 1 double crochet in your first 7 stitches, and that does include this first stitch where we placed our slip stitch, and then you're just simply going to skip your 8th stitch. And we're going to repeat that pattern going all the way around our row. And when we get done, we should have a total of 84 double crochets. And at the end of your row, you're going to skip your last 8th stitch as well as your slip stitch, and you're going to slip stitch into the top of your first double crochet. For our next row, we're going to begin by chaining 2, and we're going to place 1 double crochet in our first 6 stitches, and then we're going to skip our 7th stitch, and we're going to repeat that going all the way around our row. And when we get done, we should have a total of 72 double crochets. And just like the previous row, we're going to skip our 7th stitch as well as our slip stitch, and we're going to slip stitch into the first double crochet. And the pattern for this row is going to be to chain 2 and place 1 double crochet in your first 5 stitches, and then you're going to skip your 6th stitch. And we're going to repeat that going all the way around our row, and when we get done we should have a total of 60 double crochets. And at the end of your row we are just going to skip that 6th stitch as well as our slip stitch and our chain 2, and we're going to slip stitch into our first double crochet. And the pattern for this row is going to be to chain 2 and place 1 double crochet in your first 4 stitches, and then you're going to skip your 5th stitch. And you're going to repeat that going all the way around the row, and when you get done you should have a total of 48 double crochets. And at the end of your row, you're going to skip that last stitch and place a slip stitch in your first double crochet. And you're going to chain 2 and place 1 double crochet in your first 3 stitches. And then you're going to skip that 4th stitch. And you're going to repeat that going all the way around your row. And when you get done, you should have a total of 36 double crochets. And again, at the end of our row, we're going to skip that last stitch and slip stitch into our first double crochet. And the pattern for this row is going to be to chain 2, and we're going to place 1 double crochet in our first 2 stitches, and then we're going to skip our 3rd stitch. And we're going to repeat that pattern going all the way around our row, and when we get done we should have a total of 24 double crochets. And again, we're going to skip that last stitch and place 1 slip stitch in our first double crochet to join at the end of our row. And the pattern for this next row is going to be to chain 2. And we're going to place 1 double crochet in our first stitch, and then we're going to skip our next stitch. We're just going to repeat that alternating pattern going all the way around our row, and when we get done we should have a total of 12 double crochets. And again, we're going to skip our last stitch and place a slip stitch in the top of our first double crochet. So from here we're going to do something a little bit wonky. What we're going to do is insert our crochet hook up underneath our next stitch and yarn over and pull up through. Then up under our next stitch and yarn over and pull up through. And we're going to repeat that in our next 3 stitches. And then from here, we're just going to pull that last loop through all the other loops like this for a big slip stitch. And now we're going to repeat that process in the remaining stitches in our row. And I will say that this process becomes more difficult the closer you get to your first stitch of the row. And from here, we're just going to cut and tie off our yarn. And I'm going to secure this last little knot here by placing a few other knots. And so now your beach bag is complete. Please let me know in the comments below if you experienced any issues while you were making this, and I will do my best to help you out. If this video helped you, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel, Lipstick on a Rig. Thank you so much for working with me, and I hope you have a wonderful, awesome day.